Everyone, welcome. Okay, thank you, Josh. So I'll say it again. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Sandag, our Bayshore Bikeway working group meeting, Wednesday, May 11th. Just go over just some housekeeping on the teleconferencing. I'll just read this off. The Bayshore Bikeway working group meeting scheduled for Wednesday, May 11th is conducted virtually in accordance with the Governor Newsom's state of emergency declaration regarding the COVID-19 outbreak. Government Section 54953E, Assembly Bill 361, and the COVID emergency temporary standards issued by the California Department of Industrial Relations. Working group members will primarily participate in the meeting virtually while practicing social distancing from individual remote locations. And we tried to, we were going to do this in person, but there was a slight uptick, and Sandag office had some cases. So out of an abundance of caution, we decided to keep it virtual. So we'll go ahead and get started. With the welcome intro number one, we'll go ahead and just take roll on that. So Josh, if you don't mind taking roll. I'll give him a couple minutes to bring the list up.
Excellent. All right. City of Coronado.
Hi, President Mike Donovan. Greetings.
City of Imperial Beach.
Leyba Gonzalez here.
City of National City.
Bush here.
City of San Diego.
Vivian Moreno present.
County of San Diego.
Supervisor Vargas here.
San Diego County Bike Coalition. I am promoting Andy Hanshaw to panelist as we speak. So if that is preventing Andy from saying here, then that is my fault. Sorry.
I see Andy here. Andy, but you're muted.
I am here. Video is not. I'm here, everybody. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, that works.
Port of San Diego. I do not yet see an attendee has joined.
Which city?
The port.
Oh, the port. Yeah, you could mark not present for now, but I'm texting Sandy, so. Yeah.
Okay, I received word from Councilmember Galvez, City of Chula Vista, will not be attending today, unfortunately. And so the final public member.
Why would he hear?
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thanks, we have a quorum. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, approval of meeting minutes from our previous meeting, Wednesday, October 13th. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Moreno motion.
Okay, we got a motion.
Second from Coronado.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any public comments on this? I don't think so. All right, with that, we're just on these votes, we'll just do the voice vote. It's just more efficient. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes. Moving on to item number 3, it's public comments, communications, member comments. Josh, is there anyone from the public do you have in the queue that is wishing to address us on topics not on the agenda?
Not that I can see. Kendall, can you confirm? Okay, do you have some?
I see Andy and Mike have their hand raised.
Yep.
So any, Josh, so no members of the public?
No, well, pardon.
Andy?
Yeah, I'm just going to mention that happy Bike Month, everyone, by the way. I just wanted to mention that we're having our 3rd regional bike summit next month, again in Balboa Park at the MOPA Museum of Photographic Arts. It's going to be a full day of electeds, panels, breakouts, all centered around sort of regional bike activity, local bike activity, and everything in the bike movement today. So you can find out more through the Bike Coalition's website, but it is Friday, June 10th, and it should be a great day. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that announcement, Andy. Just want to note that Commissioner Naranjo from the representing Port of San Diego joined us. So welcome, Sandy.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, moving on to Mr. Wywoody. So Mike.
Thank you, Chair Bush. This city's Historic Association had a program last night celebrating 100 years of bicycling in Coronado. And there was a panel, and the high point of the evening was Supervisor Cox describing the history of the Bayshore Bikeway, where it is, how it relates to the rest of the region, and the future thereof. So he did a fabulous job of setting the stage for the work we have to do.
Great, thank you for that update, Mike. Appreciate that. So with that, that concludes item number 3, the public and member comments, and moving on to consent calendar. So we do have a couple of presentations today. Some of the big items. One of them is the One Highway 1 project. I think it's also called, or was called, Support San Diego. So you all may be familiar with that. So we want to give some time for that. And then the number 9, the working group restructuring, and that definitely impacts this group. So definitely want to leave some time for that. But so we do have some items on consent. There are updates that are actually focused at, looks like Councilmember Moreno's district. But yeah, if the group agrees, we can hear the presentation if we need. That we do have their updates included in the agenda packet. So yeah, does anybody wish to pull any of those items for consent for discussion for updates? Seeing none, I'd like to well, before we do that, any public comments, Josh, on these 2 items? Members of the public? Okay. With that, then, can I get a motion to approve the consent items and basically filing those reports, those informational reports?
So move.
And who is that made the motion?
Commissioner Naranjo.
Okay, we have Commissioner Naranjo who made a motion. Can I get a second?
Leyva Gonzalez, second.
All right, Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, second. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. So let's go ahead and move on to item number 6. That's the discussion about the One Highway 1 project and how it impacts the Bayshore Bikeway segment 1. So staff, do we have the GAFCON team on hand for the presentation?
We do, yes.
All right, go ahead and take it away, staff.
All right, Teresa Collins and Gaff are both in attendance and have been promoted as panelists. So I welcome you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Really pleased to be here. I can't see everyone who's on, but Commissioner Naranjo, council, I think there's some council members on. I appreciate being here. So Teresa's going to run a presentation. I was going to run you through a brief overview of where we're at, and then maybe talk a little bit about our work on the Bikeway. We're very excited about it. We really want it to be fully integrated into our project. A number of our people, including me, are avid bicyclists. Some of our staff have actually ridden across America on the Ram ride. So they're very excited about this. So if that's okay, I think I have 10 to 15 minutes to do a quick presentation, and then we can answer any questions if that makes sense.
Yep, that works.
Good.
And then do you have share screen ability? Has that been coordinated with staff already?
Say that again.
Do you have the share screen ability so you see the presentation, or just can staff pull up your your
Hi,
problem.
this is Teresa. I can't see the shared screen. It's not
Okay.
giving me that option.
Got it. We'll give staff some time to work that out.
So while they get working it out, maybe let me give an update of where we're at. So quickly, our team was selected back in 2016. It's amazing how time flies, I guess, when you're having fun, as they say. But I've learned through experience that major projects need time to percolate, to get refined. We were about to deliver our project description when COVID hit. It was very frustrating, but I have to say that it actually was a blessing because it gave us a breather to really reevaluate where we were at, to look at what's happening downtown. And there's been very significant projects and movement and planning that's gone on since 2016 when we won it. So we really were able to integrate that. We were also able to learn from the pandemic. And I think we all know this isn't the last pandemic we're going to see. So we were able to really learn from the experiences of utilization of major projects and how we can make it more resilient to future pandemics. We did present to the Port Commission on March 8th an initial preview of the revised project that we had presented in our description at the end of last year. We received numerous comments from the public and also from the Commission. We're currently working through some revisions to the project that we're hoping to present publicly in June for hopefully a commencement of our CEQA process as we go forward. We've been meeting weekly with staff at the port, and things are moving pretty well. So I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. I think this is the site. It's an image that really resonates with me. It just shows why this project site is termed the 100% corner. When John Nolan did the master plan for San Diego, he coined that term. And I think this really shows why it is and how the site has really somewhat been stuck in time as downtown is redeveloped. Next slide, Teresa. When we presented our project, we made it really clear that this project would evolve, but we committed to these 5 core values that we really feel very strongly about, and told the Port Commission that this project would change. We had no intention of baiting and switching and changing to a lesser project. We felt it would get better, and I hope as we show you, we've lived up to that commitment. Next slide, Teresa. Quickly, the project right now is roughly 110 acres total, 40 acres of land, and about 50 acres of water. It has expanded from what was originally proposed based on legislation over the last 2 years, where state lands gave the port jurisdiction over more water area. And during our meetings with state lands, they've actually encouraged us to submit a proposal on how that water could be used. And this shows how that may be integrated into our project. But the project has been divided into 7 discrete blocks. As part of the resilience of the project, we really feel that this gives us the flexibility to build an amazing public realm, bike routes, etc. And the blocks can then fill in as and when the capital's available, the partnerships are available, the timing's right to build the blocks. But from a public perspective, the public realm will be guaranteed from the get-go as we get going. I'll now next slide, Teresa. I want to focus for a moment on the public realm because I really do believe this is the special source of our project. It's what creates the value. When we originally won, we committed to over 70% of our land area being public realm. That means it's open 24/7 to the public. We've made a commitment to social justice, social equity to make this a comfortable place for everyone. So whether you live in La Jolla, Barrio Logan, City Heights, or visiting from out of town, we really want to make sure that this is a place for all. And we are working on a program right now to really cement that in place for forever beyond this project actually being built. But this shows the public realm. The ROS, which is recreational open space, is the Coastal Commission prescriptive amount of open space, and you can see we've done that right on the water. But then in addition to that, the reddish color is the additional public realm that we're adding. And we are also proposing a two-dimensional public realm where there's actually ground level, but also an elevated walkway along the water that will be what we call our Green Strand. And it's San Diego's version of New York's High Line, which is so popular, but this will connect everything together, give the public a view from a higher elevation. Next slide, Teresa. This, I'll narrate this video as we go through. Teresa, if you'll start the video. So this actually, I hope everyone can see it. Tell me, is it moving on everyone's screen? Yes, good. So this is from the north. You see G Street Mall, the fish market, the expanded Veterans Park that we're working with the Midway on. You see our fish processing building, the processing trucks moving out. A lot of the fish brought in today is really processed in LA. We see doing it here. This is our fish processing building. The lower two floors are dedicated to commercial fishermen. The public will be able to view this from the elevated Green Strand in a safe location, but really be able to observe the fishing activities that happen, the commercial fishing. The commercial fishermen are organized into a group right now. We hope that they'll actually start selling fish 7 days a week. We're proposing a fish auction that they would be able to run. And then on the third level, you see the restaurant. Keep going, Teresa. As the video starts panning back out, you start seeing our blue campus, which is next to the IQHQ project, the aquarium at the base, 200,000 feet, our learning center on its roof, and then the Blue Tech Innovation Center, which is a partnership with UCSD Scripps for Blue Tech companies. This is the base of the aquarium. We propose putting in a tide pool, very similar to what Birch has right now, where the public can actually partake in what's happening in the aquarium without having to pay. So it'll be an activity and activation that's really part of the public realm. Next slide, Teresa. You can see how the boardwalk's been expanded from 25 feet today to about 80 feet with place for biking, for walking, for passive. This starts showing how the Green Strand elevates. Coming on around, you see our retail street, which connects the city to the water, a gritty waterfront street, a street that takes advantage of San Diego's weather so that the retail stores, restaurants are all indoor, outdoor, so that we can really appreciate the weather and hopefully if we ever have another pandemic, not have to shut restaurants down. Keep going, Teresa. You see the Green Strand crossing over in the background. As we come on around, you'll see our full service hotel, the Green Strand, and our iconic tower. This is the base of the full service hotel. Again, you see the width of the boardwalk expanded out to that 80 feet with the Green Strand crossing over on the top on the right-hand side. But you'll see that we've created pathways for jogging, for walking, for sitting, for relaxing, for alfresco dining. We really want this boardwalk to be just an amazing public space on the water where the public, for whatever activity you want to partake in, can actually find a space to do it. Keep going, Teresa. Next, as we come around, you see our iconic tower, which has a hotel at the base and activities from the midpoint up. The activities will be restaurants, event centers, and etc. This is a view if you were a guest at the hotel in the tower looking down. The address of this location, whenever I say it, it actually gives me cold shivers because this is the beginning of Highway 1. It's the beginning of PCH and a very significant point in California, which I think relates to the whole history. So we really want to celebrate it. We want to create these multi-layered opportunities for the public to enjoy it, whether it's out on a promontory looking back, the High Line, or down at ground level. You'll see the ferry. We propose bringing in a very robust waterside transportation system, potentially even a ferry from Oceanside that we're looking into to be able to relieve some of the pressure on our highways. You see the concert venue, keep going, Teresa, our indoor concert venue, which is a 2,000 to 3,000 seat indoor event center. That's what you see here in the foreground. You'll see more of our hospitality offerings, our affordable hospitality, a hostel, a micro hotel. We are really trying to build in hospitality that is not available downtown into the project. Over 2,000 keys in 6 different price points. This is our revisioned Roku Park. We've been working with the Roku Foundation to really revision it. They're not very happy with the existing Roku Park. They feel Lloyd, who donated the money for it, would probably turn in his grave if he saw what was going on there. So we really want to create this amazing, large public gathering spot. This happens to show July 4th. You see the shell in the background and the public sitting on the steps outside the concert venue looking over Roku Park. Keep going, Teresa. As it comes on around, you'll see our luxury hotel. We're proposing to build a luxury waterfront hotel. And you start seeing the project from the revisioned Roku Park looking back at the project. You'll see how we've broken up the buildings to hopefully create view corridors. And although the buildings are tall, our FAR is under 2, it's about 1.7. So not a very dense place when it comes to the ground level. Keep going, Teresa. The project then pans out. You'll see the revisioned Embarcadero Marina Park South, where we propose nature play, educational play, a reconstructed wetland, and a new beach that we hope will be a major amenity for visitors and downtown residents alike. There is no place to really come down and enjoy a beach right now. We had it was actually smaller, but it's been expanded now, and we also see the bikeways traversing this. This is a vision for what that beach may look like for active and passive recreation, for launching kayaks or paddle boards. And then as the project pans back around, you start seeing it in the context of downtown. We've really tried to knit this into the fabric of downtown. So although the tower will be iconic and very recognizable, the buildings to me feel like they fit. We've stepped them back and forth so that they really have the setbacks and step backs that would make it part of the fabric of downtown. This is the California Pier. It's the extension along the side of the Embarcadero Marina Park, a place for transient boating, for taking a stroll and watching the sunset, or a place to enjoy a meal out on the restaurant on the point. The project then continues, and again, the bird's eye view kind of focuses back around, and you see the waterside as well as the integration of the project into downtown. The current schedule, all things being equal, is that we hope to break ground in 2025. We anticipate if the project can get built out in one phase, it'll obviously have to be logistically phased, but it's about a 5 to 6 year build out. The budget right now is close to $4 billion. It's amazing how it's grown for a number of reasons, in cost increases and everything else. But I have to say, I feel incredibly privileged being a downtown resident to be stewarding this going forward with the team. We have an amazing team. The port has been amazing to work with as we've taken this forward, very collaborative, and our investors and our whole team is there's not much else on their minds right now but to deliver this. And we want to make biking and bikeways and outdoor recreation a key component of this, but do it San Diego style. That's the commitment, and that's what we're trying to weave into the project. So I'll stop there and turn it over to any questions people may have.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Gaffin, for this really comprehensive presentation and going on the details, about the, I think it's really important, even though this is a bikeway committee that focuses on active transportation, that we get all the information about all the different uses and the intensity of the uses. And so that's really important for context. So with that, I'll let see if staff has any questions before I turn it into if staff has any technical questions for Mr. Gaffin and his team before we move on to member and public comments. So
If I can just add quickly, we also have been meeting and working with the Bike Coalition. So we are integrating them into our team, into our open space planning, and into the full integration of comfortable biking.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So with that, Josh, did you or staff have any questions at this point for Mr. Gaffin and his team?
Please call me Gaff, not Mr. Gaff.
All right.
Hey, Gaff, I'm glad that you're coordinating with the Bike Coalition, who are such great partners, activating the Bayshore Bikeway with annual Bike the Bay rides, which can put as many as 4,000 people on the Bayshore Bikeway for a morning. And so I wonder if, in light of some of those phenomenal but annual events, how much consideration has been taken about keeping higher speed modes separate from the lower speed walkers, joggers, or people just taking in the view along that boardwalk. We in this working group have talked about the increasing popularity of e-bikes, for example, and their higher mass and higher speeds, of course. So.
Yeah, so it's very much on the top of mind. OJB, our landscape architect, is working on the outdoor space, and we propose putting in actually separated pathways for the different speeds and activities that would be there, so that we keep everyone safe, but also enable everyone to enjoy it, whatever vehicle they're using. So that's part of the reason for the expansion of that water edge from the 25 feet right now, which do not allow bikes, to the 80 to 90 feet. In addition to that, there's the green strand. So as we work through the details on this, we do have some conceptual details of how those dividers work, and there's some examples in other parts of the country that we've been looking at, but that's definitely part of the thinking.
Great, thank you, Gav.
And a follow-up to that, yeah, I did see. So I thought that in the video presentation, I thought that was a bit not clear or missing a bit was the bikeway itself. When I saw the illustrations, a lot of it looked like pedestrian, kind of slower, passive and kind of tourist focused areas, and I didn't see a illustration of where the bikeway, the Bayshore Bikeway, would be. So Gaff, do you guys have a map or any visualizations of that, or have any idea where that would go specifically?
Yeah, we do have it. If you look at the renderings, and maybe Teresa can bring it up, you will see bicyclists there. But this is purposely a little vague watercolors. But if she brings up those renderings, I made sure that we did show the cyclists on the boardwalks as well. But we can send you a more detailed diagram of how that's going to get separated and segregated. So I'd be happy to follow up with that.
Yeah, if you didn't mind that, and I think so. Yeah, and I can kind of, I'm not sure if I can make it on this. See, I think with this image, for example, that looks like the elevated walkway, and so, and I don't know that was what I mean. Is that what the Bayshore Bikeway is going to be used?
So yeah, you see this one here with the cyclists.
Mm-hmm.
The intention here is, and obviously it's not as clear as it could be, but it will be separated. Sure. Put okay. Teresa, go back to that one, and I think there was another one as well. See that one there?
Got it. Yes, sort of. Yes.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe following up with maps so that part is more clear on where the bikeway would go. And then my other question, before I turn it over to some of the working group members, is I didn't hear anything about the trolley, the Seaport Village, what's called now Seaport Village Trolley Station. So, you know, for I think a lot of folks in the area that use the trolley, they might not bike all the way from their house to the site. So for me living in National City, I imagine, you know, a lot of times we would ride our bikes to the trolley. So that first mile, last mile issue, and take the trolley over there. So are there any bike paths or any kind of pedestrian connections or improvements from the Seaport Village trolley station to this project?
Yeah, so Teresa, can you bring up that site plan? So this presentation is everything on our property lines from the, you know, on site, but we've also been looking at potentially some crossings of Harbor Drive, which is right now, you take your life in your hands when you cross Harbor Drive. So we actually have some studies done of pretty innovative traffic circle type ideas that are used in other parts of the country to make it a lot easier to traverse from the station, which is just a block away. If Teresa I thought it may show it on here, but it doesn't. But we really want to make it really comfortable. I live in the Meridian a few blocks away, and I enter from this the southern side, and it's really difficult to get in. So we actually had a meeting today with the mayor's office, and we're going to be meeting with the city to maybe look at how to improve those pedestrian access ways, including for cyclists as well.
Great. Thanks for that, Gal. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to members of the working group for questions. So if you want to use the raise the hand feature, or just do that so we can call on you. All right, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. And a little, I guess, follow up to Marcus's comment, particularly to the first last mile. There's a lot of really great amenities in this project, and the access for people on active transportation or biking and walking, I think, is a huge component to this. And we talked about this. GAF is secure bike accommodation or bike parking for people who want to come down there and enjoy the area and amenities and feel, you know, that their bike will be safe and secure. I mean, I think we have just random, quite frankly, racks around town, and there's not a real comprehensive plan as to how to integrate them into projects like this. And so you know, if there's even a bike valet stand to be considered, or something that was so a little bit more secure than your standard standalone rack system, I think that would be key. And I think about, like, today in a Padre game, you know, you're sort of taking a risk just parking it out on the street. So, you know, a lot of people have that concern. So when you have such an impactful project that has so much bike and pedestrian access, I think it would be really innovative and forward thinking to think about some sort of central mobility hub, or you know, a place that actually has secure storage while people are enjoying the property.
Yeah, definitely. Again, on the radar, as we said, this is early. We're still going to be getting a lot of public input. We do have locations for that type of valet stop. We have 3 parking garages underground. We want to try and make them very comfortable and accessible, and build in those bike racks both at ground level and in the garages. So stay tuned. We'll be looking for a lot more input over the next year or 2 as we go through the process, but definitely part of what we want to make happen in this public realm.
Great. Happy to help advise too. That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Henshaw. Any other members of our working group that have questions or any comments? Seeing none, staff, do we have members of the public that wish to have questions to address us?
I've not seen any hands raised yet.
All right, we'll give about a minute for folks that are watching, if they want to use the raise hand function, so we can call it out. But yeah, at this point, so any other board members have comments or questions? No, I don't see any. So last call for any members of the public. Great. So yeah, so we'll close out on this item. So thank you, Gaff, for coming and presenting to our working group. Yeah, I think it's still early and kind of still concept. It looks like you guys are still working out where some of the infrastructure is being planned in the site plan. But I think you heard from staff as well as member Hanshaw about needing to identify some more, just being more clear about what some of the active transportation amenities are, where the Bayshore Bikeway is actually going to be included. So that part is really, I saw that as missing. Member Hanshaw asked for more identification and consideration for secure bike parking and amenities. Like you said, there's you know, and I've seen this too around our Bayshore Bikeway, that it's sometimes random, it's spread out, the racks, but it isn't comprehensive, it's not strategically placed. And so consideration of that and using some of Sandag's in the current regional plan, the central mobility hub and some of the storage concepts they have there. So yeah, just definitely want to second those, and we can, what we'll do is have staff take notes. So that's for your guys' record. But just overall, really want to thank you all for coming and presenting. Overall, just to give my opinion on the project, I think it's really exciting. It's definitely iconic, and something I think that really puts San Diego as a region on a map. I know it's still early and there's still more iterations. The port, which Commissioner Secretary Naranjo definitely has seen this and overseeing and has just the jurisdiction, but really appreciate the interagency cooperation here, because the active transportation part of it is important, but all the components, the hotel, the aquarium, I really hope to see this not just as a tourist space, but something for all of San Diego, those residents to enjoy. And so the beach is really exciting. Like one of my favorite parts is the tower. So I think that's something iconic as well. And it's nice to see San Diego have something iconic when you think of, like, San Francisco has its Trans-America Pyramid, or Seattle has a Space Needle, New York has Empire State Building. We don't really have an iconic, like, architecture icon like that in San Diego in downtown. So I think that definitely could be that. So if anything, I just wish it was a little taller and more bold, if anything.
Yeah. I know this is not appropriate for this committee, but National City, we actually want this to be way more than just San Diego, and we're working with Ocean Connectors in National City. We're launching our early educational program for kids on the water. So with Scripps, we're actually going to be running that, and we're going to be integrating the National City system into it. So look forward to that.
Great, and then I'll leave it off. I see Commissioner Secretary Naranjo is really quiet. I wanted her to have the last say, last comments or questions. But I see Council Member our Vice Chair Leyva Gonzalez has his hand up. So yeah, Member Leyva Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on the magnitude and the size of the project of this magnitude, about how many individuals will be working on this particular project, and with the local hire, a lot of individuals in surrounding areas will be able to be a part of this project, work on it, and do the work, which empowers people to be able to be a part of a project this size. That's all I wanted to comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And then last word, I'll give it to Secretary Naranjo.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you, Gaff, for being here today. And you know, we did have that discussion back in March at our Board of Port Commissioners meeting. And so just really thank you for listening to the perspective that I've shared. You've had many perspectives, not just from the public, but from my colleagues on the board, and especially honing in on the environmental justice aspect, not just from the consideration from the State Lands Commission, but also just connecting what that really means in the San Diego region. And so I really thank you and your team that are honing in onto that and what the design will be shaped, and so that it becomes a project that is cherished for years to come. So thank you, Gab.
Absolutely. I just want to comment that besides this being a place for everyone when it's built, we are absolutely looking at everything, not only our procurement, our jobs. This is going to create 30,000 permanent jobs. We've been working with the hotel workers to create apprenticeship programs. There'll be about 10,000 construction jobs on the project. So very committed to all that, even down to the retail stores and how do we get local stores involved who may not be able to afford the full rents of the bigger companies. So we really want this to be holistic and comprehensive and address everything from, construction, design, through to operations. So you'll be seeing more of that as we go forward.
All right. Thank you, Gaff, and appreciate you and your team for coming on. Okay.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, moving on to the next item, item number 7, the Bayshore Bikeway Resiliency Project. And it looks like we have Chris Helmer and Dennis Larson that are presenting on that.
Actually, thank you. Hey, Josh, would you mind adding Megan Openshaw and then Brian Leslie as panelists?
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do that now.
Hi, my name is Dennis Larson. I'm a principal with Nexus Planning and Research. We're the project managers for this project. Chris Helmer is not with us today, but we do have Megan Openshaw, who's a senior planner with the City of Imperial Beach. We also have Brian Leslie, who's a senior coastal engineer with GHD. And so the three of us will be giving this presentation. For the Bayshore Bikeway, this is actually an update we presented to you in the fall of last year. So we kind of just want to give you an update of where we are now with the project and the direction we're going. So what I'm going to do is pass over to Megan. Megan will give kind of like an update of the introduction, then Brian will walk through some of the concepts. Then I'll talk through what we're doing in terms of kind of public access and recreational activation. So Josh, I'm going to start sharing my screen if that works for you.
It does, yep, go ahead.
All right, then I'll pass this over to Megan.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much for having us today, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm the Bayshore Bikeway Working Group. As Dennis mentioned, my name is Megan Openshaw. I'm a senior planner with the City of Imperial Beach, and I'm very excited to be providing you all with an update for this exciting project called the Bayshore Bikeway Resiliency Project. And this project is the creation of a coastal resilience corridor within the City of Imperial Beach. So what we've been doing is that we obtained a grant from the Ocean Protection Council to develop plans to be able to repurpose an existing 1.2-mile segment of the Bayshore Bikeway and create a multi-benefit coastal resilience corridor. What I always like to really focus on when I think about and talk about this project is the multiple benefits associated with it. So it will provide enhanced flooding protection from the existing Bayshore Bikeway corridor, as well as the adjacent vulnerable communities. It will improve our coastal access, as well as help strengthen our ecosystem resilience. So we'll be incorporating those living shoreline transitional habitat areas all along the bay's edge as a part of this project. And really, when we're looking at this project as well, though, it's really serving as a way in which we can activate that Imperial Beach bayfront that we have and really provide some really greater opportunities to help focus on sustainable economic development as well as recreation. So far with this project, we initially looked at what are the existing conditions of the project area, as well as what are the opportunities and constraints associated with the project. And with that, we were able to develop some concepts related to the project. Once those concepts were created, what we then did was focus on doing outreach with the members of the public. And so we marketed for this through creating flyers, doing email blasts, going through our social media avenues such as Instagram, Facebook, and Nextdoor, as well as posted some banners in very highly attended parks within the city, and then also did electronic signage, digital signage throughout the city and areas that people can drive and basically view where the outreach events would be. And through those, we did receive a lot of good feedback. The areas that we really looked to solicit feedback on were the coastal resiliency aspects, public accessibility, as well as potential activation of the Bayside neighborhood. So really giving us the opportunity to get some visioning from our community about what they would like to see at our bayfront. And those events happened at our Imperial Beach Public Library, as well as at our Bikeway Village Plaza. Some of the elements that we've already heard from individuals were related to safety concerns with separating out some of the pedestrian areas from the cyclist areas to provide more greater opportunity for people to recreate along the bayfront. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of a background on this project, as I mentioned earlier, the extent is a 1.2 mile segment of our existing Bayshore Bikeway, and it's adjacent to our Bayside neighborhood. So for those of you who are not 100% familiar with the city of Imperial Beach, our Bayside neighborhood is the entire area that's north of SR 75. And that's the area that's considered our Bayside neighborhood. Now, right now, today, this area is prone to some existing flooding, specifically along the segment 1, where you'll see during king tide events, we'll get some wave overtopping on the Bayshore Bikeway. And what we've been doing sort of in the interim has been placing sandbags along those areas. But with sea level rise impacts, there will be future exacerbated flooding that will extend further into the neighborhood. In addition to just the overtopping during king tide events in segment 1, we also see some flooding along 7th Street and Basswood Avenue due to some of our stormwater systems getting a little bit backed up. Next slide, please. And so what you'll see here, this is some modeling. It's a Cosmos modeling showing what are the impacts related to sea level rise. So right now, as it is today, the lightest blue color is basically without any sea level rise. This is the extent of flooding that you see throughout the Bayside neighborhood. Now, with the increase of sea level rise, even going to 3.5 feet, you can see that the Bayside neighborhood is going to be excessively flooded. And what I always like to focus on with this image in particular is that highlighted green area. That's actually our existing storm drain system. And so with even just 3.5 feet of sea level rise, our storm drain system within the Bayside neighborhood is completely inundated with flooding. And essentially, if we do nothing, this is what's going to occur within that neighborhood. So with that, then I'll pass it over to Brian Leslie, who'll be going through the next slides. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Megan. I want to start by explaining a primary component of our project, this living levee that you've heard about. So the living levee is within each of our project design segments and each of our concepts. At a high level, it's intended to provide flood protection to the community while providing space for the existing high quality habitats that are within our bay to migrate upslope over time with sea level rise. So this image is busy, and I apologize for that. It depicts existing habitat types within one of our key segments within our project between Pond 10 and Pond 10A. I want to draw attention to the mid and low marsh and existing high marsh areas, the dark kind of evergreen to light green and the yellow. So where these two are kind of squeezed together, especially along Pond 10 in our bikeway, these areas basically these marsh areas don't have space to migrate upslope over time. So we want to give broad, shallow sloped yellow areas so that our marsh areas can migrate naturally over time. Next slide, please. And kind of a quick diagram to demonstrate this is shown here. This is an existing condition of fronting the Bayside community, where the steep slopes kind of keep this narrow band of existing high marsh. That's shown in the green. So this is, again, in front of the Bayside community. And what you see here is that this narrow band, which is constrained by the existing topography. In the next band, or next slide, you'll see how creation of this shallower slope. Next slide, please. Great. So the ecotone slope or living levee concept brings in a shallower slope of 5:1 to 10:1 to create this broader area almost immediately. So you add existing high marsh immediately. And then by doing this balance kind of cut and fill. And with what you'll see in the next slides is how sea level rise plays into this. So these existing conditions, you have that narrow band and with 1 foot of sea level rise, that band can be preserved, but not for so long. So 1 foot of sea level rise, you can still preserve adequate space, but after 1 foot of sea level rise, there's not a spot for that to go to. So you get submerged, basically that habitat transitions into submerged habitat. Next slide, please. So the proposal would create this shallower slope where the high marsh could transition upslope with time. And this demonstrates what 1 foot of sea level rise would look like. But so it would preserve that space with 1 foot of sea level rise, and then even have adequate space for future greater projections of sea level rise. So I wanted to explain the living levee concept and then go through the different options that we're considering for each of our 3 segments. So our first concept is to construct a living levee along the existing bikeway alignment between Pond 10 and Pond 10A. So this concept has a benefit of taking advantage of the existing developed corridor, which would lessen new impacts. However, a key disadvantage is that this option would not remove tidal muting into Pond 10A. So Pond 10A is muted at the moment, which means that tidal flows coming into this pond are constrained, kind of like a pinched hose. So the existing flood control structure on the bikeway is what does that. So high tides don't get as high, low tides don't get as low. And basically what this muting does, it doesn't allow, it's kind of a negative for both habitat and wildlife within that area. So removing this tidal muting would reconnect Pond 10A to the bay, essentially, at a high level. So it's a clear project benefit. So now I want to step to the next option, with option 1B. So this option would remove tidal muting through creation of a new bridge. We basically bridge the class 1 bikeway, the Bayshore Bikeway, and with a new kind of widened alignment that would allow for the different user groups, both pedestrian and the bikeway users. And that would, again, have that key advantage of removing the tidal muting. So we provide this new connection to the bay. And once we do that, we have the key challenge of adding a flood kind of protection or flood element to the Bayside community. So we need to bring in the living levee concept along the Flamingo Trail. Thanks, Dennis. So that green segment would be the living levee that would add elevation and flood protection to the Flamingo Trail. Next slide, please. So option 1C would reroute the existing bikeway around Pond 10A. So we're calling this the ring levee concept. So it essentially remove the alignment within the between Pond 10 and Pond 10A and have the bikeway route around. A key component here that we really like is that it would remove all kind of impediments within the lagoon, or sorry, not the lagoon, but within the bay. So bring in this strong connection, wildlife and habitat, where it's just one continuation of the bay, and bring the bikeway around this area, raising grades to provide that flood protection. Segment 2 is, there's kind of less going on here. We view this as an optimization type of segment where we're looking at the slope of the ecotone or the living levee. We're looking at the backshore and the boulevard, that roadway, and kind of seeing kind of how much space we have, how close we can get to the road, and how far we can go out into the bay to create this slope. So we're looking at anywhere between 60 and 100 foot wide living levee footprint with various slopes. Segment 3, this is where Megan was talking about the stormwater kind of issues. This area is an area where tidal waters back up into the existing storm drain system within IB. It's very, Imperial Beach is very flat and low. So water can back up quite a ways within the stormwater system and bubble up in some of the inlets. So we need to kind of address the 2 different hazards within this segment, being the tidal flooding as well as stormwater flooding during rain events. So what we're doing here is we're looking at either repurposing the existing corridor to bring in this living levee for on the flood protection side of things, or sorry, on the tidal protection side of things. The living levee is either going to take an existing alignment along the bikeway or take a inland jog or jog to the south, which removes what we've heard as a safety concern as a blind spot on the east end of that radius that Dennis is on. So that plus a tidal gate would remove the coastal flooding side of things, tidal waters kind of getting back into the city. And what we're proposing is a multi-purpose detention basin, which uses the existing recreational field for the Bayside Elementary School. It lowers grades to provide additional flood capacity during these rain events, such that the water has somewhere to go when it rains, essentially. In the next slide, we show what some of these features would look like on the multi-purpose detention basin side and the living levee. This would be daylighting existing storm drain, or daylighting existing stormwater channel that runs underneath this recreational field. The low flow channel would discharge to the bay like it does, but would be routed around this field, both kind of the recreational field and maybe a city park. The living levee concept is shown as well, both in the kind of the dry and wet conditions that demonstrate what that might look like. This field, the park, and both the multi-purpose detention basin recreational field would be dry most of the time. There's a time scale element here that I want to make sure everyone understands. When it would rain hard and be a 2-year, 10-year event, it would be wet, but within 24 hours, it would likely be dry again.
Great, thank you, Brian. I just want to quickly talk about kind of following up on what Megan said about the public outreach. As part of this project, we're looking at coastal resiliency and we're also looking at public access. The City of Imperial Beach also found this to be an opportunity to go out to the public to talk about just general activation of the Bayside neighborhood. There are a few parks there. There's Teeple Park, but they were looking at opportunities to kind of like increase recreational access for this area, but also just to ask the community, what more would you like to be here? So what we've done is we'd ask them, the community about the public access. How do they get there? What are the roads they take? Do they walk? Do they bike? Do they park? Issues they have around this. And then we were looking at how is that connected to the rest of Imperial Beach? How is that also connected to City of Coronado and to Chula Vista and to National City to get their feedback. And then we also asked them about just activating the area. And once again, using these exercises where we identified like 4 or 5 unique areas. There's like this Flamingo Trail Gateway area, as we're calling it. This is near Pond 10A. There's a birding trail area. This is actually where U.S. Fish and Wildlife has proposed an actual birding trail for ecotourism. There's this Bayside recreational area that Brian was just discussing, where there's this floodable park. Those are, and I want to point out that kind of A through C, those are the current kind of coastal resiliency component of this project. We looked at the entire area, but found out that we didn't necessarily need to focus on areas that were farther east of the public works area or the school. But from a recreational standpoint and recreational activation standpoint, we still want to ask the public, what do you think about what we can do in the public works area or around the Bikeway Village area, which has been very successful. So what we did was had exercises where they could do post-it notes and give us their comments, but they also had these cards. You'll see these images in the bottom right. These were actually turned into small cards that people could take and then go and paste and or just pin onto the board into the area that they wanted it to, where they want that activation piece to occur. So for example, in the public works area, we heard quite a bit about having places to sit, places to view the water, more of a park-like setting. What types of activation would they like to see? Do they want to see small restaurants? Do they want to see breweries? Do they want to see hotels? Those are the kind of questions that we're asking, because it's really much more of a visioning exercise. There is really no project here, but it helps the City of Imperial Beach to understand where projects may go and where their larger long-range planning should be focused. And one thing that I did want to point out, and this came up from the discussion with Gaff, and Megan already pointed this out, the one thing we have heard consistently from the public and both in Imperial Beach and from people visiting is about public safety. There have been accidents that I think probably this group is aware of that occurs on the Bayshore Bikeway. You have rad bikes, so you have one of the bigger electric bikes manufacturers right at Bikeway Village. And so it's good that it's more popular, but there's also a lot of users down there. And I think for many of you, like if you go down on, even during a weekday morning, weekends are incredibly busy there, but even weekday mornings, there are a large number of diverse users here. So public safety has been the #1 thing we've heard. There's big support for actually fully separating out a cycling path from what may be like a more naturalized path or just a separate pedestrian path. And so that's like the biggest focus we have. And so a future project is looking at having them be completely separate. And then I want to go back and show you that one thing that we're looking at is then kind of creating these nodes that would occur like for around Bikeway Village, where there'd be better signage, there might be changes in pavement type, so that where cyclists and people rollerblading and people running and walking, where that comes together, people recognize that's kind of a crossing point. So there's a safer area for cyclists to know they're going to have to slow down in that area because there are other users there. So I want to point out that like public safety is really the #1 comment we've heard, is what we're addressing in everything that we do. So that's what I have for now. One thing I did want to point out is that 2 final things. One is that this project is funded by an Ocean Protection Council grant. And the city of Imperial Beach has also applied for FEMA funding for the BRIC funding, which is it's called Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. We applied for that grant this last fall in hopes of getting the money to actually finish the final engineering design and doing the construction. I also want to talk about, we are continuing the outreach. We're trying something now where we're calling them virtual office hours. We're doing 3 Tuesdays in a row that's from 6 to 7. We're actually going to use, if you're familiar with Jamboard or Mural or something like that, we'll do Zoom. People can join in and really just ask us specific questions about this project, and they can give us their feedback in a little bit more of an informal manner. So what we're doing with this project is just trying to find different ways of reaching people. We know that we might be a little bit in post-COVID territory, but we had a lot of positive response to doing virtual office hours because of people's schedules or just their ability to access. So we're still moving forward with that, along with having other in-person public events. So I'll turn this back over to you for any questions.
All right, thanks staff for the overview and the presentation on this. Yeah, we'll turn it over to, well, at first to see if staff, Sandex staff, Josh, if you all had any comments or questions on this project or how it impacts the whole Bayshore Bikeway plan.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to it. I was very interested to see the potential rerouting of the bikeway around Flamingo Trail, for example. Might take our top line summary of the bikeway as 24 miles to 25 miles, but I think that's totally reasonable. The route has changed before with building bridges, for example, and so I certainly do think that there are the 2 competing concerns, perhaps not competing, but the environmental improvements that can be made for flood control and the inevitable rise of tides, and then the improvements that can be made to the bikeway. And so that's where I was wondering about the alternatives that you've shown and how this group might be able to offer some input on which of those alternatives you move forward with, or what the process is for that. Because I do think that when it's a win-win, doing things like straightening the alignment of the bikeway so that the visibility sightline issues going around turns, as you mentioned, are no longer an issue is ideal. So too is the aim to separate users by those modes. And so I wanted to get an idea from you all about how this group might be able to help guide the final alternatives selection.
And Josh, if I can jump in really quick before we get comment, is that there's probably 2 areas where, and we've been talking to Fish and Wildlife and Coastal Commission, the Port of San Diego. We've been engaging with a lot of different agencies about this. And I think there's probably two areas that change, one slightly and one a little bit could be more drastic. But for segment 3, one thing I want to point out, and this is what Brian talked about, there's kind of been a realignment that occurs here. If you're familiar with the area, there's actually like this, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a naturalized decomposed granite trail. There's actually a small bridge, pedestrian bridge, that's right in front of the school. We would actually kind of realign this area. And partly the reason for that is that we want to have people have access to what will be, and the city of Imperial Beach is kind of working with the school district about making what is the Bayside Elementary School, making that a joint use park so the public can use that not school hours. So one idea is by realigning the bikeway gets better access to the park. It also means that two other things happen. One is there's this just small area of wetland that's kind of disconnected from the rest of the bay. So it has environmental benefits of just fully connecting the bay. The second part is that, as Brian talked about, there's this area when you're coming from east to west where right before the bridge, it kind of drops down. It's a little bit of a blind curve, and they've had accidents there. And so this is something that will make it safer for cyclists, safer for pedestrians, because you get a better view in this area. So there's some safety. This actually, by doing this alignment, it has basically a lot of benefits and not really anything that takes away from it, because you still get sweeping turns. I think it's still going to be just make a safer environment. So I did want to, before we go to the other concept, I'm curious if there's just any comments on this or any concerns about that approach. Because I would say that the profile A2, the one where we realign it is a little bit of the preferred approach here, because it's better for the environment, gives a better access, and it's safer.
Was that for specifically staff to comment, or was that just general?
Well, I guess I don't know the best way to do this. I'm
Next
mostly
step.
just getting staff or anyone here like what they think about it, and because we can move on to the other segment where we get rid of the current dike, because I think there's a little bit more to talk about there.
Well, yeah, and I'll just chime in, and I mean, this is really it looks, and I see the vice chair's hands up, so definitely want to hear from him. This is his jurisdiction, so that I think takes priority. But I'll say, I think, even though this is within Imperial Beach's jurisdiction, I mean, we're all one region, right? And so we don't all just stay in our cities. Like we travel, we go to the beach. A lot of folks work in National City. And I'm hoping that the environment is a top priority. And there's so much of our wetlands have been wiped out. So any chance to reconnect them, I think we should take that opportunity. Not just that, but it's also sea level rise mitigation to a certain extent, right? I mean, because wetlands help buffer when there's storm events and whatnot.
Exactly.
So I mean, I'll make that comment myself. But with that, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Bush. I appreciate Brian, your presentation, your narrative. Dennis, you bringing up the safety concerns. So I'm sure everyone's aware that there had been a few accidents on the Bayshore Bikeway last summer, one of which was recorded by a resident who has a nice little deck, and his cameras caught the actual accident in real time. And it's just unacceptable how fast the individuals, when they ride on these motorized bikes, they get sidetracked, they get distracted, and they are unaware that people are walking on the bike path. So previously, when this was presented to the council, it was very widely accepted because of some of the working that you're referring to, because there are blind corners around by the Park and Recs yard. The possible option of a separate route where people can walk and then they'd be separated from, these motorized bikes, people on bikes, things like that. So that's very important, because one of the first ways that we're going to address the safety issue is by putting additional signs out on the path and some additional, rerouting and reflective type stuff on the path to try to get individuals to slow down as they approach Bikeway Village. So Bikeway Village is the area where everybody kind of congregates. They're in the process of putting a new brewery there. So a lot of individuals that aren't on bikes, that aren't even walking, are going to be, accessing the bike path. So the safety is humongous. I'm for it. I attended one of your outreaches when it was at the library. You guys did a phenomenal job. And I also want to, give a compliment to Megan. She did a phenomenal job. She's such a great person. I really appreciate you. I texted your boss, Tyler, and I told him you needed a pay raise. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the comment. That's very helpful. And it's, like I said, I think we're doing as much as we can to make it safer for everyone who's there, and because it will become a more active area. And so like I want to mention, along with Bikeway Village, it also happens like at 4 other locations, like where Public Works is, where the Flamingo Trail intersection is, having these different places where there will be a slowing, and it'll be done with signage, along with kind of changes in pavement, probably potentially like some art feature, something there, so you're coming up to a specific place where there's going to be different users coming together, just to make it safer, make it safe as possible. So I did want to go then just to see if I can get your feedback on, it's really option 1B and 1C, because these are the case where both of these, the existing dike would be removed. And one thing I do want to point out here is that this dike is it's in City of Coronado. So this is not actually in the City of Imperial Beach. We have been coordinating with the City of Coronado. And they were in agreement with us when we move forward with this, that it made sense to incorporate this area within the project, because the environmental benefits are so great for opening this up. This is 60 acres in Pond 10A that's currently muted. And by connecting this to the bay, all of a sudden you're getting all the different species that can now migrate all through the bay into Pond 10A. So it's, these were not natural to begin with, because these were all salt ponds. So this is really beneficial all around. But it is something that the reason we want to bring up to do, and by the way, we are presenting tonight at the San Diego Bicycle Coalition at their meeting, the same presentation. They have had representation at the workshops we've had, and we've been engaging with them, and they've been very helpful about getting the word out. But it's something we want the feedback because of, for example, with C, if you remove this altogether, then you don't have this kind of like, you don't cross over here, and there's a little bit more of a sharper turn that occurs. And it's something where we would do this in design of using standard design about what this turn can be, but just, we know that there has been some concern with cyclists about the loss of that and what this turn might be. Now, once again, this would still be a separated path from pedestrians, but
Hey,
it
Dennis,
is a change.
If you're sharing your screen, I can't see it for one.
So you cannot see it?
I see it.
Okay.
That's on me then. Sorry, everyone.
Okay. So I think that's probably the main question we have for you, is like how you feel about that, about taking this away, and just what do you think the cyclist feedback might be on this?
Got it. I'll put that question to member Wywoody, used to be a council member at the City of Coronado, and I don't know if he's been following this, but so member Wywoody, have you heard any comments on this? Is there opposition specifically to this sounds like environmentally preferred alternative?
I'm not aware in the circles that I'm cycling in any discussion or even awareness of this possibility. If the Flamingo Trail, as I've ridden it, it's a pretty slow trail because of the way it meets the development at the south end there, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
I'd be concerned if you're taking a segment that, people move along pretty quickly and robustly now, and you're putting them through a chicane. I am guessing a lot of the people that I ride with would just as soon not do that.
Yeah. And and by the way, and I appreciate the feedback. That is something that we have been hearing. I think that is why we are also looking at option B, which is actually to remove the dike, and then there would be a bridge to be above here. We've also had feedback from people saying it'd be nice to have a bridge, but it'd be a pedestrian only bridge. So there'd be a place for pedestrians to go that they could, and then you would still reroute, potentially reroute the cyclist down the Flamingo Trail. But that's the feedback we're looking for.
Got it. Dennis, so question. So on this option that is on the screen, option 1B, so it would maintain the existing path, but then there would not be the second, what is that, the mute it's called, where the title uploads can enter in easier?
Yeah, so actually, Brian, you may want to jump in, but like with the bridge here, you would actually reduce the muting because you would remove that full earthen dike that exists now, and it would be an elevated bridge.
Yep, that's right. I wanted to mention for 1C that kind of ring levee that we described, that would be an improved bikeway. So the Flamingo Trail as it exists would change. Like we make it into a faster speed. I mean, well, there'd still be the turns that we talked about, but the bikeway would be there with a separated trail. So it would be an improved situation.
It's a very good point, actually, that for the width that you see the bikeway right now, and it ranges from like 6 to 8 feet, but we're planning for a minimum of 8 feet. So even what happened down the Flamingo Trail, there'd be a separated bikeway, there would be an 8-foot bikeway. So the width of the bikeway, at least the Imperial Beach segment, would be continuous for the entire length of the trail, the bikeway.
And I guess a concern would be that a number of riders might just jump out to the highway at that point and skip that segment.
Yeah, I guess I could see that a possibility, other than we're hoping they wouldn't, only because the bikeway would still feel the same way as it does in the Coronado and the current condition it does now. But I do understand that concern.
And this, just to be clear, so this 1C, so it would open a connection, and everything that's in gray, all of that would be basically removed, right? Or
Exactly. So this would be just one continuous bay here. There would be no access across here.
Got it. So and it would be an opening. So the rest, I'm using my mouse as if you guys could see it. So where there's the brackets where it says new title connection, west of that, so that path, yeah, so just to the left, you can move the cursor over. So all of that, what would happen with all that dirt and everything there? Would it get reshuffled, moved, or would it stay there?
It would be moved.
So it would be complete. So would it be, I guess, excavated? So where it's like the whole thing would be opened up, or is that just that new title connection? I guess I'm just not understanding what happened.
I'll pass over sorry, Brian, I'll let you answer this. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't fully designed that feature yet. It would be restored, I think, is the quick answer. And then exactly how it would be restored, yeah, with habitat. So it would be
Understood.
tile connections and transitional habitat of different shapes and sizes. Kind of look to the northern pond 10A for kind of inspiration, like kind of windy, they call them like dendritic channels and kind of islands, that kind of look, just trying to bring those tides into 10A.
So we still have one other item left on our agenda, so I want to just keep this moving, but appreciate the discussion. So I'll call last call for member comments, and then we'll turn it over to member of the public. So any other member comments on these proposals? All right, staff. Yeah, sorry.
I don't see anything from the public. I do want to make one comment about that 6 to 8 foot. If that is what you're citing as the path width for the existing Bayshore Bikeway anywhere, that is below standard. The path should not be narrower than 10 feet. And that, of course, is a multi-use path for the use of bikes and peds. But even an 8-foot path for the exclusive use of bikes is absolute design minimum. That would be a separated bikeway.
Yeah. So sorry, let me correct what I said. I was thinking about Flamingo Trail. No, the way we're doing it is that if it's, and we're just looking at this right now, is that if it would be a minimum 8 feet if they're separated, and then you would have a shoulder between what those are. But we're also looking at trying to make it a maximum of 10 feet. So it would remain the way it is now, even if it's a cycling only path.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and so no, it looks like no members of the public wanting to speak. In Vice Chair / Council Member Leyva Gonzalez, so did the city of IB have a preferred alternative that they've made a decision on?
No, no decisions have been made yet.
Okay, understood, thanks. Well, just last thing I'll say about this, like comment I'll make, so it looks like that this would essentially elongate Bayshore Bikeway, the full path, is that correct?
Through option C, it would.
Through option C, okay.
Yeah.
I just say, like, for me, I would support that, again, and taking into consideration the environmental concerns and and I'd like to hear more about the not this meeting, but more from the city of Imperial Beach, like what other benefits it has. But yeah, if there's, again, wetlands they provide not just a buffer for sea level rise mitigation, but it's also habitat. And yes, this does elongate it, but a lot of Bayshore Bikeway in this segment, a lot of it is recreational. And so that, and it adds an added benefit. This is an opportunity too to, there's not many segments of the bikeway that bring the bike path so close to native habitat. And so I see that as an opportunity. It would definitely elongate the trip though. So I hear Member Woody's concerns. I think I heard earlier about the curve is kind of sharp, so maybe that could be mitigated, but just overall my comments are, for me personally, I guess representing City National City, just myself, yeah, I do see option 1C as the preferred one because of those environmental benefits. And then it kind of, in a way, it extends, could look at it as more of an extension or elongates Bayshore Bikeway. So that part I like, but obviously it's just, kind of preliminary and just recommendations and comments. So still more work to be done, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I do want to point this out. This is important. This is part of like there's still a lot more outreach to do, and this is not, we're getting the feedback right now in terms of this process. So the next phase is when we would look into, which is kind of matching up with funding to get deeper into the design and engineering. So there'll be additional outreach, and that's at the point when we start to kind of solidify what these are. But I want to be clear to everyone that there's still plenty of time to provide feedback, and I don't want to feel like we're purposely trying to kind of keep this a very open dialogue so no one feels blindsided by it. But there is a point where we would decide when we start doing like CEQA and NEPA for a project later on, is to say, okay, what are the alternatives we want to move forward with? But we're not there yet.
And may I ask, Dennis, whether you've involved the city of Coronado at this point?
We've actually been engaged with City of Coronado planners for about a year now on what this is. And so once again, and we're also, especially with Coronado and the Port of San Diego, because this is within their jurisdiction, and also with Fish and Wildlife because they lease from Port of San Diego. But yes, we also were trying to coordinate with the different, for example, the coastal resiliency efforts that City of Coronado is doing right now.
Great. All right. Thank you all. With that, so we're close out this item. So thank you, Dennis, City of Imperial Beach staff and your team for giving us all this information in this comprehensive discussion. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, with that, so we really need to, I think we barely have quorum. So with that, we want to move on to so item number 8 was just in general asking for member updates, which were kind of already covered at the beginning of the meeting and the member comments. So yeah, I didn't have anything specific. So I'd like us to skip on to item number 9. This is important, the Sandag Working Group restructuring. And this was a directive from the executive committee. So I'll let Josh give the summary, give my thoughts. And I really would like to call on each individual member to give your thoughts so that we can, have, kind of an agreed on recommendation for how we move forward, because essentially what this is just dissolving the existing Bayshore Bikeway working group. And so we have an opportunity to transition it into something very similar, but want to get that feedback and discuss the pros and cons of each one. So with that, Josh, do you want to take that away? And Josh,
sure. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Thanks. Yeah. Give me 1 second while I swap presentations. Okay. All right. Excellent. So this working group restructuring process began, there's been a lot of movement on it in 2022 that the supporting materials that I sent out earlier today cover, but I do want to step back really quickly to 2021, when this when input from working group staff at Sandag started to be solicited, and everyone that is liaising with working groups were providing some answers to some surveys and amount of work effort that that goes into producing to helping to coordinate working group meetings. So I, for example, was one of the staffers to share my information for the active transportation working group in addition to this Bayshore Bikeway working group. So with the results from that, the executive committee had some key takeaways here. There's the second bullet point, which outlines a few of those. And they moved forward with a discussion about how the working groups might better be aligned to be flexible, still have the objectives of each of the charters of the individual working groups and what that might look like going forward. So the results of that in February was the executive committee at Sandag approving a restructuring of the working groups. And you can see how, you can see in this chart, the working groups that will move forward in the next fiscal year, which is July 1st of 2022. And so for us, the Bayshore Bikeway Working Group, in addition to the Active Transportation Working Group, we're no longer a working group in line with and reporting up to the Transportation Committee. So, and similarly, other transportation-related working groups include the SanTech, San Diego Traffic Engineers Council, and CTAC, the city county. I forget that acronym, but anyways, they've been meeting as a joint working group as well, and so they were also being phased out, dissolved, and restructured as a mobility working group, which you can see is italicized with the purple as a new working group reporting up to Transportation Committee.
Hey,
And
Josh,
so
I
that,
apologize for
yeah.
interrupting you, but Supervisor Vargas is trying to hop back on. So if staff could just let her back on. So apologize for the interruption.
Yeah, sure, I can.
Thanks.
Yeah.
My apologies, our computers are like, something's wrong with the internet. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, glad you're back. All right. Okay, so here's the restructured working groups approved in February to go into effect July 1st. Then there is, sorry, one second. I mentioned the mobility working group, which is effectively the working group that a working group like the Active Transportation or Bayshore Bikeway working group sort of dissolves to. And you can see what the composition of that working group is and how those members are appointed. And I shared the charter and the supporting materials. So here are some of the draft work plan items for the mobility working group, which is, again, just draft, something that they are continually soliciting feedback from members and others. So certainly something that can be shaped forward to reflect the interests of this group, or for example, the Active Transportation Working Group, which you see, we have provided quite a few items for them to consider that are in line with what we are working on at Sandag specifically. That's the third bullet point. So yeah, you know, good staff to collaborate with, certainly, and we certainly feel that we will be able to address many of the upcoming active transportation focused projects that we are working on at Sandag through the mobility working group. So the schedule for this working group restructuring, as mentioned, once it was approved in February, the executive committee, there was the establishment of those new working groups, as mobility working group being one back in March. And so they've been working on their charter and the work plan. In May, we are having a discussion like this one about the alternative of continuing working groups like ours as a task force, which is not subject to the Brown Act requirements and can meet as needed. And so that is being presented as a pretty good solution to continue a working group like this with the composition like ours and the objectives that we have by revising our charter and moving forward as a task force. And then by June to report back how we all plan to proceed. So that is something I wanted to discuss a little bit more specifically, these technical task forces. Again, in the supporting materials, I added the charter that's being drafted for the former shoreline preservation working group, which is going to continue on as a task force. For example, we have established a task force that I am the staff lead on, which is related to AB 43's speed limit setting provisions, a California Assembly bill that allows more latitude. So, for example, I've been coordinating with 4 jurisdictions about what their interpretation of the law is and how they plan to move forward, and how we can give Caltrans feedback from a subgroup of the mobility working group and the larger mobility working group with some recommendations for how they should be considering safety corridors, for example, so that we can lower speed limits on some priority streets. So that's another example of a task force that's been moving forward. And then here are a few more, some that are still being discussed about how working groups may or may not continue on as task forces. And the last 3 bullet points are just sort of related to some of the responsibilities of the task force, which are not unlike the responsibilities of the working groups. Okay, so that's it for the presentation. I'll just kind of leave it on this slide, and I'll stop talking now and open the floor to everyone else.
Hey, appreciate that overview, Josh, and just to kind of frame the discussion a little bit more. I would like to hear, and we'll call on each member because I think it's important to hear from all of us individually. I will say that for this particular working group, and just a lot of them too, Sandag has had this question of efficiency and resources. And some of our items we meet about, it's been about almost twice a year, and I don't even know if it's been necessarily 3 times. A lot of it is informational items, and those are good, but the working group structure just hasn't been efficient use of our public resources. And so that's been the kind of the challenge, and also attendance has been a little bit of a struggle too. So that's why we have, so it looks like there's a few different options to discuss. A complete dissolution, I believe, is one of the options. Another option is transitioning this into a task force. Another option is, I don't really think it's actually an option. It's saying just leave this group as is, which I think the executive committee ultimately decided they don't want to do that because of the Brown Act and the staff costs. And maybe there's another idea from this group. Maybe it's a hybrid of somehow folding this into the mobility working group that's been created. So just wanted to frame that. But with that, I'd really like to hear from all the members. And I did see, let's see, did see former supervisor Greg Cox and the immediate past chair of this working group. I saw earlier his hand was up, so I don't see it up now. I'm not sure if he's with us, but yeah, give him time to hop on and give maybe some info and history there. So yeah, Greg.
Well, I apologize for coming into the meeting late. I don't really have a problem if you change the name to task force, but I think the point that needs to be made is that Bayshore Bikeway Working Group is really a very focused committee, unlike a lot of the other committees that Sandag has, that has really broad territories to cover and big issues to cover. It's somewhat ironic as I was looking through the agenda. And Mike Wywitty and I were on a panel last night over in Coronado celebrating 100 years of cycling in Coronado. And he asked me to give a little bit of a report on the Bayshore Bikeway. The irony is that the Bayshore Bikeway, the first planning efforts for the Bayshore Bikeway actually happened in 1975 when the City of National City was the lead agency for as little as this amount is, for $24,500. There was a feasibility study that was done for what at that time was called the Beirut Bikeway. And we changed the name of that because kind of thought that was a Lebanese recreational element. So the Bayshore Bikeway, I think about 1981. So we're coming up with some major sections that will be done. Barrio Logan is going to be open to the public in 2024, 25. The border to border on the report that was just given is going to be opened 2025. I didn't see in the national city alignment, but that's the other big major segment that is not completed. It sounds like the funding is there for that, and that's moving forward in an expeditious manner. So, I mean, we are coming up on 50 years in 2025. And it looks like with the funding we have, with maybe the one exception being the segment down by Western Salt, which is, if there ever is a development down there, the owner of that property, Mr. Gabay, is committed that he would basically put in the missing segment of the Bayshore Bikeway down at that end. And if that moves forward in an expeditious manner, who knows, maybe that would be done by 2025. So, I mean, in many respects, I think the vision for the Bayshore Bikeway, you know, it's a government project, so it doesn't necessarily go quick, but it looks like it's going to be done in 50 years, and it looks like it's going to be done, you know, certainly, hopefully in all of our lifetimes. And, you know, I don't know whether there will be a need for a continuation of a task force or working group after that. But I think right now, the work still needs to be done. We still need to, you know, make sure that things are moving forward, that they're being advertised, that they're being put out to bid, that they're getting under construction. But I really think at some point in time, there probably won't be a need for a working group or a task force. But I think until those major projects get done, including the border to border, I would hope that at least there is a commitment to have a task force, for lack of a better name, that will meet on a, you know, as needed basis to make sure that we keep moving these projects forward. And that I'm not a member of the task force, I'm not a member of the working group anymore, but I do think that it does help to have, you know, kind of a couple of grain of sands trying to make sure that these projects move forward to a speedy conclusion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cox. I appreciate your service on the previous working group and your perspective, so appreciate that. With that, Supervisor Nora Vargas.
Thank you so much. So I actually, can you lower that? Thank you. So I concur with the recommendation from staff. As the, you know, we did a lot of work as the chair of transportation for we imagine that it was having on staff. And so I think that staff recommendation to do as task force is the right direction. So I would like to, I don't think we need a motion for that, but I think for us as we're moving forward.
All right, so we have so thank you, Supervisor. So we have a motion to transition to recommend that the Bayshore Bikeway be transitioned into from the working group to a task force. So we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second Leyva Gonzalez.
Okay, thank you. And then Supervisor, did you have any other? It broke up a little bit, so it was a little hard to hear you. But did you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I'm keeping it short because there's something happening with our technology today. So.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Supervisor. Appreciate that. Moving on to Member Henshaw.
Thanks, Marcus. I just have a question. Does the task force? I saw that the mobility working group had voting members from each city, but was it correct in saying there were other members from like in my case, advocacy groups or the coalition to be represented on that committee? And do they not have a vote on that? other areas of interest. So it looks like it doesn't.
That's correct, Andy.
Yeah. So I obviously have some concern there where we, on active transportation working group in particular, we did have a vote on that. And, I felt there's a specific focus on active transportation in that group. And I also see value in, the Bayshore Bikeway working group, which has been, but as the supervisor said, it's nearly done. So moving that to a task force is not so much of my concern. Although it's a great group to have and be a part of, and I was honored to do that as an advocate and a non, elected or city staff person. So I guess my concern to share is not having that voice or vote that we had before. And if it just goes down to being represented on that mobility working group, I guess that's what it is. But that's just sharing my concern there.
So Member Henshaw, so I think that put up a good question. So is it your understanding that then like the public members in this, if we transition to a task force, like your position, for example, that would be eliminated? Is that what basically your
sounds like it? I mean, it sounds like it.
Okay, got it. And I think let me put this to staff, to Josh. Is there a so if we still wanted to, as in terms of recommendations, decide we still want a couple of public member seats, which that I support that and I appreciate that. I'll say for me, like I like having different member seats. I know that our Air Pollution Control District Board that Supervisor Vargas is actually the chair of, that we have 3 public member seats, and that's really helpful. So it's not just electeds, it's also getting the perspective of other professionals that work in the and advocates in the industry, if you will. So could you speak to that?
Sure. I think that the Shoreline Preservation Task Force has a really good example of a broad composition of members. And so that charter that they've been producing, they moved very quickly as a working group to spin up the task force and work on that charter. So I certainly think that's that composition to have public members and a charter not unlike what we have in effect now for the Bayshore Bikeway Working Group can lead our work as a task force. And then the only other thing, so 2 more things I want to mention to Member Hanshaw is that your concerns related to the composition of the Mobility Working Group might best be addressed to the CTAC-SANTEC joint meetings. I believe that they are meeting tomorrow. That team has taken the lead certainly on the composition of the Mobility Working Group moving forward. So just mention that. And then the other part is that we certainly don't have to make the decision before June 30th to create a task force for the Bayshore Bikeway or any other purpose. That can happen after July 1st, for example. But this is still a good opportunity to make that decision now. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does that kind of address some of your concerns, Member Hanshaw?
Yeah, some. I mean, I appreciate sort of the opportunity to be heard a little bit more on this issue, but I just having a vote on those previous boards and not having one now is a little concern. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think you should advocate for yourself and not. It's not even about you, Andy, but just having that seat for that seat. That's important. So no, I appreciate you saying that and being upfront with that, because that is important.
Yep.
And that's something I would support us looking at. I assume that, so this is coming back in June. So these are just discussion items, recommendations, and so then it will I think come back in the executive committee. Consider this. So moving on to the vice chair. You did second the motion, but any other thoughts you have? Vice chair.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good enough. Let's see this. Did I see another? Andy, I saw your hand back up.
No, I'll just lower it. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Let's see, former council member, Mike Wywood. Thoughts?
I certainly appreciate Greg's suggestion that this stay alive as long as we're still sprinting to the finish. I have to confess, I'm a little concerned about the analysis that went into this. The suggestion being that we meet infrequently, can't get consensus and don't, or enough people. You know, those generalizations about the things that cause us to get rid of committees. What I recall in this particular committee is some very down and dirty work being done in order to advance the project. And I'd like to be sure that if we create a task force to replace this committee, you know, that people, staff members, elected members, voting members, whoever is a member of this thing, is still meeting with the respective organizations, the utilities, the corporations, everybody else who is impinging on completing this project. So anyway, I think there is work to be done, and the fact that we can't see, or maybe we can, maybe we can't see the extent of the work to be done. I'd sure like something like this committee to stay alive until the project's completed.
Great, thank you, Woody, for those thoughts. Appreciate that. So, if recording that, I think it's consistent with the recommendation. And so, just to be clear, if you are supportive of the recommendation of the transitioning this to the task force?
I am.
Great.
Yeah.
Be clear. Okay, great. Thank you. And then Council Member Vivian Moreno. I know you had to turn your camera off earlier. So, are you still with us?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Your thoughts, Council Member?
This is, I think, the third time I hear about the restructuring of our working groups. I think whatever the body's in favor of, I'm for.
Good enough. All right. So thank you, Council Member. With that, any other staff, did we have any other members of the public that wanted to address us on this? Josh? No?
Yeah, I'm not seeing
Marcus?
All right, Mr. Cox, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Maybe it's my lack of understanding of what a task force is. If it's whatever committee it's under, does the task force then have the ability to kind of self-compose itself? Because, I mean, we've had, obviously, we've had representation from the Bicycle Coalition. We've had representation from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, from the Navy. We've had at different times people coming in, obviously speaking in regards to NASCO. So is the task force, does it have the ability to bring in the people and resources that it needs? And how does it relate to the different working groups that I know they're trying to assign them to?
Yeah, so we can certainly have the representation be composed of any of the groups that you just recognized, and MTS for that matter, who has been vacant on this working group for as long as I've been a part of it. But the composition can be, as Member Wywoody mentioned as well, some of those folks that can make the most effort in a timely manner to get some intractable problems solved. And so that can be a fluid membership. We can update the charter. There will be a charter that gets drafted, and the work plan, which is dynamic as well. And I think in terms of resources, that certainly for Sandag's on Sandag's end of things, that there will be the support to keep it going. And the last part is this, the relationship with the working group. I think of it as a subcommittee to the working group. That's certainly how some of the other task forces have been reporting.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Josh. All right, so with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Again, this is to recommend to the executive committee that we transition to the Bayshore, San Bayshore Bikeway a task force. And I believe the next steps would be that in June, that the executive committee, and it sounds like potentially Supervisor Vargas, so are you part of that committee that would hear this, just so we have some, like, you know, in terms of discussion, like, you know, maybe you can report that to the committee, this discussion and cohesiveness? Yeah, I see. Okay. So Supervisor nodding. Okay, awesome. So so it sounds like the recommendation is going to go to consideration to the executive committee, and then we'll hear back from there, is what I assume. Is that correct in terms of next steps, Josh?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, great. And the only thing I would add is just, so we did the motion a second, I'll call for the vote, and then just as the comment, you know, to try to retain the existing structure as much as possible. So Member Hanshaw brought up, you know, having those advocacy positions, I think is really important. So if we can put that for consideration. But with that, so we have a motion and a second, and we'll just do a voice vote. So those in favor of the motion and the action, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you to the working group members and staff. And with that, we are done for the day. This was like our longest meeting in the last year and a half. So thank you for staying on, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a
Thank
good
you.
All right, bye.